In November 1998, a retired pathologist published a study in one of the most prestigious scientific journals in the world. The results ran less than 2 pages. They collapsed 2 centuries of denial in a single paragraph. The study traced the Y-chromosome of Thomas Jefferson's male line to the descendants of an enslaved woman named Sally Hemings. The match was exact. The alternative explanation, the one Jefferson's white family had been promoting since 1802, was destroyed, not weakened, destroyed. The DNA said so with the kind of specificity that leaves no room for interpretation. But the DNA didn't come out of nowhere. It came at the end of a trail that began in 1782 at a Virginia plantation, passed through the streets of Paris, exploded into American newspapers in 1802, was told in quiet, precise detail by a 68-year-old carpenter in Ohio in 1873, and then ran underground for over a century before science finally surfaced it. This is the story of what the DNA found. Not just the paternity result, the hidden families, the men who crossed the color line, the descendants who commanded Union regiments and never once said their grandfather's name. Jefferson's bloodline went places nobody expected. The science proved it. The rest is what America chose to do with the proof. The 6th of September, 1782, Thomas Jefferson wrote 4 words in his account book. My dear wife died. Martha Wales Skelton Jefferson was 33 years old. She had been bedridden for 4 months following the birth of their 6th child. Jefferson had barely left her side. When she finally went, witnesses recorded that his grief was immediate and violent. Edmund Randolph wrote to James Madison that Jefferson had been left inconsolable, and that the circulating report of his swooning whenever he saw his children seemed entirely justified. His daughter Martha later described accompanying her father on long, solitary walks through Monticello's grounds in the weeks that followed, saying she was a witness to many a violent burst of grief. He kept a lock of Martha's hair for the rest of his life, folded inside a piece of paper on which they had both written lines from a novel they loved together. He never remarried. What most retellings skip is what was already living and working inside Monticello when Martha died. A girl named Sally Hemings. Sally was Martha's half-sister. They shared the same father, John Wales, a wealthy Virginia planter who had fathered children with Betty Hemings, an enslaved woman he owned. Martha was Wales's legitimate white daughter. Sally was born to Betty, which meant she was born into slavery. Same father, different mothers, one free, one enslaved. The genetic math of the era made Sally's appearance striking to everyone who described her. Betty Hemings was already the child of a white man, which made Sally approximately 3/4 European by ancestry. Contemporary accounts called her nearly white and very handsome. She reportedly resembled Martha in ways that were noticeable. Jefferson did not replace his dead wife with a stranger. He replaced her, in time, with her half-sister, a woman who may have looked like her, who shared her father's blood, and who he owned as property under Virginia law. In 1787, Thomas Jefferson was serving as the United States minister to France. His younger daughter Maria needed to join him in Paris, and the family chose Sally Hemings as her companion for the Atlantic crossing. Sally had never left Virginia. She would not return the same person who left. France was not Virginia. Under French law, enslaved people who set foot on French soil could petition for their freedom. Every petition was granted. For the first time in her life, Sally Hemings was legally free. She spent 2.5 years in Paris. She learned French. Her brother James, who had traveled with Jefferson earlier, was being trained as a French chef. She was paid a small monthly wage. She moved through a city where the institution that defined her entire existence back home was openly despised. And according to the account her son Madison would record decades later, it was during these Paris years that the relationship with Jefferson began. When Jefferson prepared to return to Virginia in 1789, what happened next is the part of this story that most tellings rush past. Sally Hemings refused to go back. Madison Hemings described it with precision. She was just beginning to understand the French language well, and in France she was free. If she returned to Virginia, she would be re-enslaved. So she refused to return with him. A young woman, free on French soil, with the legal standing to stay and the leverage to negotiate, looked at the most powerful American diplomat in Europe and said no. To bring her back, Jefferson made two promises: extraordinary privileges for herself, and a solemn pledge that her children would be freed at the age of 21. She calculated, she negotiated, she returned to Virginia on terms she had extracted from a man who owned her. Jefferson kept that promise. Every one of their children who survived to adulthood went free. The arrangement inside Monticello's walls might have remained private indefinitely. What ended that was not a historian, not a family member, and not a court. It was a bitter journalist who had decided to burn Thomas Jefferson's reputation to the ground. The 1st of September 1802, Jefferson is the sitting president of the United States. On this date, a man named James Thompson Callender publishes a front-page article in the Richmond Recorder. The headline is not subtle. The article states plainly that the president has kept, for many years, one of his own slaves as his concubine. Her name, Callender wrote, is Sally. Callender had not always been Jefferson's enemy. He had once been his weapon. He attacked Alexander Hamilton. He went after John Adams. He served time in federal prison under the Sedition Act for writings that helped Jefferson's political rise. When Jefferson became president, Callender expected a reward, specifically the postmastership of Richmond. Jefferson refused. This article was the response. The story detonated. Federalist newspapers reprinted it with enthusiasm. Songs mocking the president circulated through American cities. Callender pressed the attack for months, publishing follow-up pieces through the end of 1802. Jefferson never publicly denied or confirmed a single word. He simply stayed silent and let his family handle it. His family handled it by constructing a counter-narrative that would endure for 2 centuries. Jefferson's grandchildren, Thomas Jefferson Randolph and Ellen Randolph Coolidge, separately identified the real culprits. Not Jefferson, they said. His nephews, Peter and Samuel Carr, young men who had access to Monticello and whose behavior, the family implied, explained everything. Callender drowned in the James River in July 1803. His accusations lived on as unproven scandal. The Carr defense became the official family position, and for nearly 200 years, most of American scholarship accepted it without seriously testing it. The Carr defense was elegant, precisely because it was specific. It did not say Jefferson's accusers were wrong without offering an alternative. It named names. It identified a perpetrator. It gave historians something concrete to accept instead of something uncomfortable to investigate. And for 2 centuries, that specificity was treated as evidence of credibility rather than what it actually was, a testable claim waiting to be tested. There was one problem hiding in plain sight from the very beginning. Jefferson's own grandchildren could not agree on which Carr brother was responsible. Thomas Jefferson Randolph named one. Ellen Randolph Coolidge named the other. Peter, Samuel. 2 people with direct family knowledge, pointing at 2 different men. If the family had genuine inside information about who had fathered Sally's children, you would expect them to agree on the identity of that person. They did not. That detail should have been the first red flag raised by every serious historian who encountered it. It was not. Instead, the Carr theory became institutionalized. The Thomas Jefferson Heritage Society was founded by white descendants and supporters, specifically to defend Jefferson's reputation against the Hemings claim. They published papers, organized conferences, and promoted the nephew theory with the confidence of people who had never had to worry that the science might contradict them. The broader historical establishment largely went along. Dumas Malone, the Pulitzer Prize-winning Jefferson biographer whose 6-volume work defined mainstream understanding of Jefferson for decades, treated the relationship as unproven and the Carr explanation as the more reasonable conclusion. The racial architecture of American scholarship made this easy. The people making the claim were black. The president being defended was the most celebrated white founder in American history. The Carr defense didn't survive 2 centuries because it was convincing. It survived because almost nobody with institutional authority wanted to dismantle it. The 13th of March, 1873, a 68-year-old carpenter in Waverly, Ohio, sits down with a local newspaper editor named S.F. Wetmore. His name is Madison Hemings. He is Sally's son. He was born at Monticello in 1805, freed by Jefferson's will in 1826, and has spent the decades since building a quiet life in Ohio as a woodworker and farmer. He is not famous. He will never be famous. But on this day, he tells a story that should have rewritten everything America believed about its most celebrated founding father. The account is published in the Pike County Republican under the headline, "Life Among the Lowly, Number 1, a deliberate echo of Uncle Tom's Cabin." In it, Madison traces his family's lineage with the precision of a man who has carried these facts his entire life. He describes his grandmother, Betty Hemings. He names John Wales as the father of both his mother, Sally, and of Martha Jefferson, making them half-sisters. He recounts the Paris years. He names the specific negotiation, extraordinary privileges, children freed at 21. He describes daily life at Monticello in domestic detail that only someone who had lived it could produce. He was not guessing. He was not repeating rumors. He was recording his mother's account as she had given it to him. For 125 years, the most influential Jefferson scholars in America looked at this testimony and dismissed it. Dumas Malone characterized it as unreliable. The reason was rarely stated directly, but it was transparent to anyone willing to look. Madison Hemings was a black man making a claim about America's most iconic white founder. In the racial hierarchy of American scholarship, his words simply did not carry the weight required to disturb the established story. Madison Hemings died in 1877. He never saw a single word of his testimony validated. In the late 1990s, a retired pathologist named Dr. Eugene Foster decided to test the Carr defense, the one way it had never been tested, with science. Foster was 78 years old when the results were published. The study design was elegant in its simplicity. The Y-chromosome passes essentially unchanged from father to son across generations, mutating only very slowly over time. If Thomas Jefferson had fathered Sally Hemings' sons, then male line descendants of those sons would carry the Jefferson Y chromosome signature. Jefferson had no surviving legitimate sons, so Foster tested the next best option male line descendants of Field Jefferson, Thomas Jefferson's paternal uncle, same grandfather, same Y chromosome lineage. Foster assembled his test subjects carefully. 5 male line descendants of Field Jefferson, 1 male line descendant of Eston Hemings, Sally's youngest son, 3 male line descendants of John Carr, grandfather of the very nephews Jefferson's white family had blamed for 200 years. He analyzed 19 genetic markers across all of them. The results were published in Nature on the 5th of November 1998. The data was unambiguous. The Jefferson Y chromosome and the Eston Hemings male line descendants matched perfectly identical haplotype across all markers. The Carr descendants and the Hemings descendants did not match at all. Not partially, not approximately, 0. In a single publication, Foster's study did 2 things simultaneously. It confirmed the Jefferson connection with near certainty, and it annihilated the Carr defense, the specific, named, 2-century-old counternarrative that Jefferson's white family had promoted and American scholarship had accepted without ever seriously challenging. The nephews didn't do it. The DNA said so. In January 2000, the Thomas Jefferson Memorial Foundation issued its official report concluding there was a strong likelihood that Jefferson was the father of at least one, and probably all, of Sally Hemings' children. Madison Hemings had been right. Every word. For 125 years, nobody with institutional power believed him. The science did. Jefferson freed exactly 5 people in his will. 4 of them were Sally Hemings' children. The 5th was their brother John Hemings, a skilled carpenter who had worked alongside Madison. Every other enslaved person at Monticello, more than 600 over the course of Jefferson's lifetime, remained in bondage. He freed his children with Sally, and only his children with Sally. That fact alone, sitting quietly inside his own legal documents, tells a story the Carr defense could never explain. Beverly and Harriet Hemings were the first to leave. They walked away from Monticello in the early 1820s, light-skinned enough to pass, and disappeared into white America so completely that the historical record loses them almost immediately. 2 of Thomas Jefferson's own children absorbed into the country their father helped build, as if they had never existed. Before I show you what happened to the others, if you want to look at your own results and see where Jefferson's bloodline fits into your ancestry, I put a full 3-volume PDF bundle over at the OriginDNA website. It shows you how to read your raw data and find matches beyond what Ancestry or 23andMe tell you. Link is in the description. But stay right here, because what comes next is the part most people completely miss. Because Beverly and Harriet's disappearance was not the most remarkable thing that happened to Jefferson's hidden family, it was not even close. The story that belongs on this channel, the one that connects a Virginia plantation to a Civil War battlefield to a Memphis cotton broker's quiet grave, begins with the youngest of Sally's surviving children. A boy born at Monticello in 1808, a musician, a man who would eventually make a decision that erased his family's identity for over a century. His name was Eston Hemings. Eston Hemings was born at Monticello on the 21st of May, 1808. He was Sally's youngest surviving child, and by the genetic math of his ancestry, he was approximately 7/8 European. Jefferson's will freed him in 1826, and he and his brother Madison settled in Charlottesville, built a house together, and took in their mother Sally, who lived with them until her death in 1835. Eston married Julia Ann Isaacs, the mixed-race daughter of a Jewish merchant and a free woman of color. He built a reputation as a gifted musician and entertainer, leading a dance band that was well known throughout the region. In 1836, the family moved to Chillicothe, Ohio, settling into a thriving, free black community with strong abolitionist roots. For 15 years, they lived there openly, their status as people of color recorded in census documents, their lives stable and visible. Then Congress passed the Fugitive Slave Act in 1850. Suddenly, Ohio was dangerous. Slave catchers operated freely in free states, and free black families became targets. Eston made a calculation. In 1852, he loaded his wife and 3 children, John Wales, Anna, and Beverly, and moved the family to Madison, Wisconsin. When they arrived, Eston changed the family surname from Hemings to Jefferson, not as a statement, as a survival strategy. The entire family crossed the color line and entered white society, and they never looked back. Eston died in Madison in January 1856, 4 years after the move. He was 47 years old. He did not live to see what his decision made possible for his son. What it cost him to make it, only he ever knew. John Wales Jefferson was 17 years old when his father changed the family name and walked the family into white America. He had been born John Wales Hemings in Charlottesville, Virginia, in 1835, named after his great-grandfather, John Wales, the same man who had fathered both Martha Jefferson and Sally Hemings. He grew up in Chillicothe as a person of color, moved to Madison as a white man, and spent the rest of his life making sure the distance between those two identities was never closed. Before the war, he and his brother Beverly managed the Wisconsin House Hotel near the state capitol. When the Civil War broke out in 1861, John enlisted in the Union Army as a major in the 8th Wisconsin Infantry Regiment. Over 3 years of brutal campaigning through Mississippi and Louisiana, he rose from major to lieutenant colonel to colonel, eventually commanding the entire regiment. He fought at the siege of Vicksburg. He was wounded in the field. Somewhere during those campaigns, he ran into a man from Ohio who knew the family's history, a man who knew that the Jefferson colonel commanding white Union soldiers had once been recorded as a person of color. John Wales Jefferson pulled that man aside and begged him not to reveal that he had colored blood in his veins, which he said was not suspected by any of his command. The man kept the secret. John survived the war, moved to Memphis, Tennessee, and built a successful cotton brokerage called the Continental Cotton Company. He died on the 12th of June, 1892. He never married. He was buried in the family plot at Forest Hill Cemetery in Madison, Wisconsin, as a white man under the name Jefferson. His descendants had no idea who they actually were until a retired pathologist published a study in 1998. The DNA was settled. The hidden family was found. The lie was exposed. You would think that would be enough. It was not. The Monticello Association is an organization of Thomas Jefferson's white descendants. They hold annual reunions at Monticello and maintain the family graveyard where Jefferson is buried. For generations, membership was a quiet matter of bloodline documentation. Then November 1998 turned it into a national reckoning. Lucian Truscott IV, a white Jefferson descendant, a best-selling author and West Point graduate, appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show alongside Hemings' descendants and invited them publicly to attend the Monticello Association reunion. In May 1999, for the first time in history, Black Hemings descendants walked onto the grounds of Monticello as acknowledged family. Some white Jeffersons welcomed them, many did not. In 2002, the Monticello Association voted overwhelmingly to deny the Hemings descendants full membership. Truscott himself later wrote that the family's refusal to accept the Hemings descendants was the clearest evidence of racism he had ever witnessed inside his own bloodline. He was ostracized by some of his own white relatives for saying so publicly. The Thomas Jefferson Foundation, the organization that actually runs Monticello, had officially accepted the relationship in January 2000. In 2018, Monticello opened a fully restored Sally Hemings exhibit, declaring the relationship settled historical fact. They identified what they believed was her room, a cramped space in the south wing, and turned it into a permanent exhibit, honoring her as a complete human being, a mother, a daughter, a sister, a world traveler who negotiated her children's freedom on French soil. The institution accepted it. The family still has not fully let them in. The DNA is now 28 years old. Some doors, it turns out, science alone cannot open. Right now, as you watch this, America is marking 250 years since Thomas Jefferson wrote the most famous sentence in the English language. All men are created equal. The man who wrote those words built two families, one free, one enslaved, and spent 38 years maintaining both while the country he founded looked the other way. Madison Hemings told the truth in 1873. He was 68 years old, a carpenter in Ohio, a man with no institutional power and no famous name. He gave a precise, detailed, first-person account of his own parentage and his mother's negotiation with the third president of the United States. For 125 years, American scholarship dismissed him because of who he was. In 1998, DNA confirmed every word he said. His great-nephew commanded Union soldiers in a war fought partly over whether people like his grandmother deserved to be free. He lived his entire adult life terrified that someone would discover the truth. The man who wrote, "All men are created equal," created children who had to erase half of who they were to survive in the country their father helped build. The question was never really whether it happened. The DNA settled that. The question is what it means that it took a laboratory to make America believe a black man's testimony. And what it means that even after the laboratory spoke, a family voted overwhelmingly to keep the door closed. Jefferson's bloodline went places nobody expected. It went to Paris, to Ohio, to a Wisconsin hotel, to the battlefields of Vicksburg, to to a Memphis cotton broker's unmarked corner of history. Science found it. The record confirms it. If this changed how you see the founding of this country, subscribe. There is always another story buried under the one you were taught.
Thanks for watching this video. Before you go, your raw DNA data has hidden stories waiting to be unlocked. Tap the link in the description to download your ebook copy and find out what they are.